Fuck you too!
All right.
10, 9, 3, 2, 1. Welcome, Poison Ivy's children, the thing from another world, and the future CEO of the Wayland Yutani Corporation, to episode 378 of an Unearthly Podcast, streaming live on Veterans Day / Armistice Day, the 11th of November, 2020, and featuring The Seeds of Doom, written by Robert Banks Stewart and starring Tom Baker as the Doctor and Elizabeth Sladen as Sarah Jane Smith. I am Bill Sylvia, the Man in Black, and my coffee is almost empty. With me are Randy Ronson McCulloch.
What happened to 5?
5 is right out. Mad Matt Winchell
I have wine and you don't.
and Thomas Fireheart.
Poison Ivy, isn't this the origin story for the Floronic Man?
Boom.
All right, so how's everybody's week been?
Well, apart from my mental health deteriorating severely yesterday for some reason, fairly okay.
That's it. That's interesting. I actually had an unusually good day yesterday.
Karma. It's just reverse ends of the world, pulling mental health back and forth like a freaking floss.
Mm-hmm. I'm blaming at least some of this on post-election anxiety, but yeah, I had a bunch of deadlines over the weekend, and I just could not get my brain to focus on them, which resulted in me just kind of like panic working on them throughout Sunday night and Monday. But I'm past them now, so things are better.
Matt and I had a Phasmophobia stream on Saturday that was actually decent, where we didn't wind up being disappointed that the game crashed on us and lost all our money or other stuff. So that was good.
And that was a last-minute change in stream, too.
Mm-hmm. That was because all of our games our normal RPG night stuff got canceled.
Mm-hmm.
Then we did have we did have kind of a shitty Tuesday as far as our streaming was concerned.
You and Aaron's internet just completely bottomed out.
Oh yeah, it blew up freaking something.
Sunday was also a bust, but I turned it around and just did a heck of it. I'm doing deeds in the game we were supposed to be playing.
Yeah, that wasn't the only day I had to cancel that too, because Monday I was feeling ill. I ate some bad Chinese. Was like just feeling like I was going to be sick for like 3 hours, so that wasn't fun. Turned out the peanut sauce was the dipping sauce that came with like the meat on a stick had gone south.
I still haven't tried any of the Chinese places in town yet.
Well, Chinese places are either decent, okay, or death.
Apparently, they're all fusion places. None of them are specifically one nationality.
Oh, I hate that. Give me a good Cantonese place to get some sweet and sour, or what's the Szechuan, or some nice spicy Chinese.
Don't say that word on a podcast when I'm going to be mentioning Rick and Morty later.
Well. Next, someone's going to talk about eating a pickle recently.
God.
No, closest I had was relish that I had with that I mixed in to make tartar sauce with my fish finger sandwiches the other day. And yes, I know there's some British people out there going, "You make your own tartar sauce for fish finger sandwiches?" Yes, get over it. I hate store-bought tartar sauce. I don't know why, but it's just easy for me to say, "Hey, let's take 2 dollops of mayo and a couple of squeezes of relish and mix it together."
Yeah, I don't use it enough to buy a store-bought. I would buy one and it would sit there for 2.5, 3 years. Makes a lot more sense to make my own.
And if I feel like I need to make it fancy eating, I'll add some lemon juice.
Mm-hmm. So we've actually got some news today.
Yep.
Yeah,
but
apparently.
before that, we've got birthdays, and we got a lost story. Then we've got news. Then we've got some geek talk, which 4 pieces there. That ought to take a while. And then we've got the summary, which I believe is Bill today.
Yep.
And then our episode review, our final thoughts, and our ratings. So, moving down into birthdays, we only got 2. The first is on November 5th, and that is the birthday of Andrew Hayden Smith, who played Jake Simmons in the 2006 series. He was both there for Rise of the Cybermen, Age of Steel, and then was there at the end for Doomsday.
That was Ricky's friend?
Yes, that was Mickey. That was Ricky's friend, and then later Mickey's friend. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the 10th, we have the birthday of Claire Higgins, who played High Priestess Ohila from 2013 to 2015, originally on the webisode Night of the Doctor. She turned 65. So happy birthday, Andrew and Claire. Technically speaking, our own Thomas Fireheart is having his birthday right now, but only in Australia and not in America.
Yep.
So
depending on what the time is where you are, it might roll over to my birthday while we're still going.
Most likely.
Possibly, considering how late we're starting.
So happy birthday in the next hour and 12 minutes.
And
for the record, I turned 30.
I remember turning 30. Wow, that was a while ago.
That was about 5 years for me. Almost about to be 6 years for me.
Actually, you know how old I was when things got 30? Andrew Hayden Smith was still playing Jake Simmons.
Nice.
Wow. All right. So from births, we go to deaths, and we do have a lost story. AUP is sad to announce the death of Jeffrey Palmer, a 3-time Doctor Who actor and one of the few to act in both classic and New Who. Palmer was born in 1927 in London, where he was raised until World War II. As soon as he was of age, he was called up to national service for the final years of the war. Afterwards, he studied shipping management for a bit at Streatham Technical College before settling into accounting. It was only at the urging of his then girlfriend that he joined the Amateur Dramatic Society, and that changed his life forever. He spent several years touring, eventually working his way up to assistant stage manager at Croydon's Grand Theatre. Starting in the 1950s, he began starring in television productions. Early on, he was in an episode of The Army Game alongside future First Doctor William Hartnell. This led to bit parts in a lot of television productions throughout the 50s and 60s, including Family Solicitor, Gary Halliday, Bootsy and Snudge, The Avengers, Emergency Ward 10, Zed Cars, Of course, said Cars. George and the Dragon, Softly Softly Task Force, The Expert, and Out of the Unknown. In 1967, he took a role as a property agent in the kitchen sink drama, Kathy Come Home. It was shortly after that he made his first 2 appearances in Doctor Who, playing Undersecretary Edwin Masters in 1970's Doctor Who and the Silurians, and returning 2 years later to play the administrator in The Mutants, who was assassinated by the Marshal within, I think, the first episode? Something like that. Around the same time, he signed up to act in John Osborne's West of Suez at the Royal Court, alongside Ralph Richardson. He continued to act in several major productions at the Royal Court and for the National Theatre Company, and in 1974 was directed by Laurence Olivier in J.B. Priestley's Eden's End. That was probably that particular production, since I believe that play has been around since the 30s. It is said he found the play and the experience tedious, and he preferred the more immediate medium of television. So, returning to TV, he began to act in sitcoms, most famously in the role of the hapless brother-in-law of Reggie Perrin in The Fall and Rise of Reginald Perrin, and as the long-suffering Ben Parkinson in Carla Lane's Butterflies. He also had a memorable appearance in the Fawlty Towers episode The Kipper and the Corpse, playing the doctor determined to have his breakfast despite a body being found in the hotel. Fawlty Towers. The 80s saw him in such shows as Hot Metal, Executive Stress, The Kenny Everett Television Show, and Look at the State We're In. Finally, in 1992, he was cast in a leading role opposite Judi Dench in the sitcom As Time Goes By, which would run until 2005. He was made an OBE in 2004 for services to drama. It was only after he got done with As Time Goes By that he played his final role in Doctor Who, the ill-fated Captain Hardiker, the captain of the space cruise liner Titanic in the 2007 Christmas special, Voyage of the Damned. He continued acting well into his 80s, playing the head geographer in the 2014 film Paddington. He is due to appear in the forthcoming Roald Dahl film An Unquiet Life as Dahl's Repton headmaster Geoffrey Fisher. He is survived by his wife Sally Green, with whom he had a daughter Harriet and a son Charles, who has directed 6 episodes of Doctor Who himself.
As a slight addition, he also worked alongside Judi Dench in the Bond film Tomorrow Never Dies, because he was a military higher-up, I think Navy.
Oh, that was right up his alley. That would have been easy, yeah.
So, moving on to our actual news, we do have some Series 13 news. And yes, it's official and true this time. Direct from the production team and the mouth of Chibnall himself, filming has started for Series 13. It is underway at Rothlock Studio, with all precautions being taken for COVID-19 possible. I'm sure that means that they're trying to keep as people, at least 6 feet apart. Or this is Britain, so 2 meters. All the production team that's not on stage wearing masks, that kind of thing. Probably regular blood screenings too.
5 bacon sandwiches apart.
No, that's still too close. It'd be at least 10 bacon sandwiches apart. Anyway. Because of the COVID crisis and the large queue for series needing to be filmed, Series 13 is getting shortened from 11 episodes to 8. Again, this is due to the viral crisis, not budget cuts. As you know, no series were getting filmed over the summer, so now there's a backlog that the BBC is trying to go through. So probably all the BBC series are getting shortened seasons, just so they can get back on track. Otherwise, they'll be behind for years.
Mm.
And finally, once again, due to a CV check, we can confirm that Jodie Whittaker, Bradley Walsh, and director Jamie Stone will be returning for Series 13. No word yet on Tosin Cole or Bandeep Gill.
There's some question as to why it only mentions Walsh. One reason we're speculating is that it might be an episode where the companions are split up and only Bradley is with the Doctor, but we really don't have any way to know for certain.
No, we don't.
Mm.
We can only speculate at this time. But Jamie Stone was a director last season. He directed Spyfall Part 1. He directed the plastic episode. What was that one called? Praxeus. And he directed the 2-part series finale. So all in all, while we don't like about half of those episodes, the reasons we don't like those episodes are not because of the directing.
Mm.
We liked the directing, especially for Spyfall Part 1, because that really kind of fit what they were going for.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't like Praxeus, but we didn't like the writing in Praxeus. The directing, as far as we could tell, was okay. And then the 2-part finale, we liked the first part. And, that was, classic in the making until they ruined it with the second part. But again, that was because of the writing, so. And then finally, Big Finish has some new releases this week. First of all, a Fourth Doctor Adventure, Series 10, Volume 1, with Tom Baker and Louise Jameson is out. Fifth Doctor, Shadows of the Daleks 2, with Peter Davison, Dervia Kindren, Anjali Mohindra, and Jamie Parker. New update for Time Lord Victorious, Enemy of My Enemy, with Paul McGann. And finally, 11th Doctor Chronicles, Volume 2, with Jacob Dudman being the voice of the 11th Doctor. And then free this week is Dalek Empire, Chapter 1, Invasion of the Daleks. And that's free for download from the Big Finish website. And that's all the news we have. Moving right along to Geek Talk.
So for our first item, I recently both rewatched the previous seasons of Rick and Morty, as well as watching the episodes that were only recently added to Hulu. This will be my first time rewatching them since I initially watched them, some as they aired, some after, not counting the time that I was half asleep on Randy's couch, trying to stay awake while the only thing I mainly remember from that was interdimensional cable, which is extremely trippy when you're half awake. So some of my general takeaways rewatching it, season 1 definitely really feels like, the voice actor and or others are, sitting in the booth high, spitballing and then leaving the animation team to figure out what to do afterward. I know some episodes they pretty much state within the script are written that way. Obviously, the entire season wasn't that way because there's multiple writers credited. By season 2, it definitely feels a lot more put together. Season 3, I would say at this point still feels like the best season, the one that they were trying the hardest on. Part of that, I think, is because at that point they were really trying to make sure they got renewed, whereas season 4, they knew that they were kind of set for a few years. But I think in addition to all the memeable moments, I think there are a lot of really strong moments in season 3. One thing that I mentioned in our group chat while I was rewatching it, I think it was a stroke of genius that they had Rest and Relaxation, where you see basically 3 different versions each of Rick and Morty. You have their regular selves, their toxic selves, and their detoxified selves, all with overlapping but very different personalities, followed by the Rick Lantis mix-up, which is set aboard the Citadel, where you're seeing many different Ricks and Mortys with, again, some very prominent personality traits, but some that really go off the beaten path and really distinguish themselves as unique original characters. And just the way it kind of sets an appetizer and then kind of delivers on that now that the audience knows a little bit more what to expect is something I didn't really appreciate when I was watching it as it aired, in the same way that I do looking on it together. As for season 4 itself, there's definitely a lot of, or not a lot, but there's definitely a few moments where it's kind of critical of some of the heavy demands from fans. Of course, the first episode was very much noted when it came out that it was criticizing people for demanding, for basically saying what they don't want and not really saying what they do want. Whether that has anything to do with the ratings drop for all the episodes following that, I don't really know. It might just be coincidence. But I did find that interesting that the ratings dropped after that episode compared to the season before it. Kind of along a similar vein, in the first episode that was new to me, that was in the 2020 half of season 4. There's an episode that's a series of vignettes, which basically talks about one-off characters and serialization, basically kind of offhandedly saying that they are not really interested in structured continuity and they would rather keep things fresh. Obviously, of course, we know that there is some continuity happening, but they're basically saying don't hold your breath for it. I actually don't remember what was, well, doesn't really matter episode by episode, but then, of course, there's the Vadavadicid episode, which is notable for, well, partially the fact that they've doubled down on the whole promise not to do time travel. And they do it in a really over-the-top way, as you would expect from Rick and Morty. Oh, that's right. Primordius is kind of it's all right, but it's forgettable. With the season finale being the most interesting because it does return to a lot of the serialized aspects, just as they kind of gave the impression they wouldn't do. And the thing there is that with the return of Tammy and Phoenix Person, they basically are not interested in Rick at all, which is kind of a slap in his face. And he decides to, of course, he has to rectify that. I would definitely say there were some strong episodes in here, but overall, I think the season was more forgettable than season 3. If you enjoy the show, you'll probably still enjoy this, but I don't think it hits quite the same highs.
Okay.
All right. I guess we're moving on to, I guess it's what, video games next?
Yep.
We got 3 of them. First up, Sly.
Yep. I, after a sort of rocky start at first because the only PS3 controller I could find at the time kind of being really janky on me and sort of being busted. Thankfully, I found another one that worked. So I was able to get around to finishing Sly 2. I remember after I finished it, looking up like opinions on it, and at least what I could see for the time, critical reception of this was, oh, this one's better than the first game. And I'm just, maybe it's just me, but while there are elements of this that I prefer over the first game, and this also might just be the detriment of playing it now as opposed to when it originally came out, because I'm like playing the PS3 ports of these games. But for whatever reason, this just, a lot of it just felt a bit too repetitive. Like, even for, I mean, this is, I wouldn't necessarily even call it a kid's game, more just like an all ages game, but I don't know, just something about it just felt a bit too repetitive. I mean, thankfully it's fairly short-ish, unless you're really going for completionist run. Although it's probably one of the easiest platinum trophies I've ever gotten on the PS3. Because literally just playing the game and buying all the upgrades gets you a platinum. Some of the controls were a bit stiff in parts as well, which was kind of annoying. The fact that in this one that you can actually play as Bentley and Murray as well as Sly was kind of a nice change, and it stops some parts of the game from being a bit too repetitive, but then you realize you're basically just cycling through the same things. Um that being said, the story was nice. But like I don't know, just something about it didn't like gel with me as much. And bloody hell, uh this port needed some work as well, because there's at least 2 different times it crashed on me, and a few like technical glitches here and there where like Sly's hat would just you'd be on a call with another character and his hat would just fly off his head or disappear or something. And it's like, what the fuck? Which, either that's issues that they decided not to bother correcting for the port slash remaster, whatever, or it was like problems that arose because of the port. I don't know, but yeah, um, I would still say that like people should check it out. I do like that there are consequences at the end, despite this is obviously the good guys win story. Um, but yeah, I would say if you're like, if you're a fan of these games, you like it, but I don't know, I just prefer the first one. So moving on from that to Ultra Despair Girls, which emphasis on the despair, because I guarantee you that this, at least for me, I have yet to play Danganronpa 3, but this game, which to specify, this is a side, essentially this is a side game to the main series. It's technically within continuity. It's set between the first and second games, although it does spoil things for the second game, so you are better off doing it the way I did and playing the second game first and then going to this. It's also a shooter instead of a visual novel. There is still a lot of text, but there's actual like actiony stuff where you're going around shooting monokumas with a friggin' weaponized megaphone, because okay, why not? But yeah, this game is bleaker than either of the other two Danganronpa games. Like those two are like, there's some heavy shit that happens or that you learn about, or and just generally the fact that they're murder mysteries where they're killing off characters that you're getting to know over time. This takes you to the absolute brink of like, fuck me, this is intense. God, I forget what I compared it to when I first started it, but I think it was like I compared it to like Children of the Corn meets Battle Royale. Because the main villains are a group of kids that are hunting adults, but also trying to generally kill off all of the adult population of this one city to create this like kids utopia. And you learn more about what goes into that, and you learn the shit that these kids have been through that kind of warped them into becoming what they are now. And that's most of what's heavy about this. It's like, shit. some of the stuff that those kids have put through is just like, fucking hell. There's no way the main two Danganronpa games were anywhere close to this. And this was a game, and I'm pretty sure I remember bringing it up off podcast at the time, but I was playing this initially and was most of the way through it when Tim died. So I took a break from it until like this week. So that's like 3 to 4 months that I was just like, nope, not in the mood for that. Thanks. Because it was just like, yeah, no, I'll wait. And I'm glad I finally got through it. I would say I was definitely in a decent enough mental state at least to get through it by now. But yeah, this is a game that I would put like a big trigger warning on, because there's some fucking very bleak shit. That said, there is still a lot of lighthearted stuff, but yeah, like, know what you're going into with this one. But yeah, I would still recommend people kind of check it out, if nothing else, for like the story. But yeah, if you prefer the visual novel style, I guess, of the main games, then you can probably just skip it.
All right. So you're done?
All right.
Yep.
All right. Start the next one. And last one for video games is me. This is for Star Wars Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2. As if they couldn't make the title long enough, after this they would just regard it as the Jedi Knight series.
Dark Forces 2, The Forcening.
Something like that. So it's for the first Dark Forces technically took place between A New Hope and well, actually this is a little bit before New Hope, but also in between New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. Dark Forces 2 Jedi Knight technically takes place, I believe they said, about a year after the events of Return of the Jedi. Kyle Katarn is still the main character. He's apparently becoming slightly more aware of the fact that he is at least on some level Force sensitive. And he is still a smuggler and gun for hire. He is trying to find out who killed his father, actually. I believe his mother must have already passed away when he was young, according to the opening bit. He's trying to find out who killed his father, and he comes in contact with a droid who apparently went to his father's house and got a strange disc, but after Kyle didn't want to tell him what was on the disc, or what might be on the disc, he decides that he's going to inform the Dark Jedi, a group that's trying to help rebuild the Empire, that Kyle's apparently on their toes, and decides to head off. The story basically for the first couple of levels is Kyle chasing after the droid, 8T88, very unoriginal name for that droid. But 88 gives you a runaround for several levels. Kyle does go back to his home. He does finally get a hold of the disc, and putting it into the machine at home, he finds out that the map to a location called the Valley of the Jedi is what the Dark Jedi are after, and that his father kept everything secret as much as he could by, first of all, putting the map into the ceiling of their particular room of their home, which is now gone because they stole it. But also, he had secreted away a lightsaber into the droid that he put the disc into. So at this point, Kyle does finally get a lightsaber, and he starts using it. This is also where the game starts allowing you to slowly collect points, which will allow you to unlock different powers, and you can actually decide which side you're on just by selecting powers. Then the rest of the game is basically Kyle hunting down the Dark Jedi, one by one, defeating most of their members until the last guy is left. I can't remember the villain's name for some reason. They really don't use his name that often in the game. But what I've referred to him is Dungeons & Dragons Jeremy Irons, the guy that they got for this, overacts so hard. That's the other thing too, by the way. Voice acting in this game, really good. And the main good characters are actually really done really well because they actually have live action cutscenes uh, in this game. I guess you call it full motion if you were like playing like Sega CD or something. But they do have live actors, and I believe most of them do the voice acting throughout most of the game. The voice acting is really good. The main good guys are really good in both versions, but holy cow, the over-the-top hammy acting of the bad guys when they're on screen in the live action bits. My
So,
word.
so Highlander syndrome.
Kind of, yeah. Like I said, the main the main
If
bad
you've
guy
ever
is Jeremy
seen,
Irons from Dungeons and Dragons. I expected him to start just going at some point.
yeah, if you've ever seen any of the later Highlander movies, the second they get labeled as the villain, they all start acting like Kurgan from the first Highlander
Yeah,
movie.
except they're even more over the top than that. Half this, at least the main guy is. Well, actually, the main guy, and then there's I forget what that's called. The guy that's like checking the doors and stuff at Jabba's palace in Return of the Jedi. I can't think of that
Bib
race's.
Fortuna.
Okay, yeah, him. There's a guy that looks a lot like him, who's also apparently a part of this group, but he's also like just literally almost he is 5 seconds away from looking through the fourth wall at some points. It feels like because he is just overhamming it. Um, so the main gameplay of this game is still a first-person shooter like the first Dark Forces game, but I also mentioned that they brought in a lightsaber. Here's the one thing I actually don't like about the game that I can't find redeemable. The acting is at least comic gold unintentionally, maybe at some points, but this is bad. So they give you a lightsaber, and you have a left click and a right click, even with other weapons. Both of them are still just attacks with the lightsaber. You have to cross your fingers and hope that your character can react to laser blasts if you're ever going to defend them yourself. This also includes, by the way, lightsaber fights. And if your lightsaber isn't properly blocking for whatever reason it decides not to block, you're rolling the dice and probably getting killed. Which leads to the point that after about the first major lightsaber battle, after that, it's a dice roll, and even then, half the time, you might as well just be cheating because the game just literally throws odds at you that you just can't surmount most of the time. I think I was able to defeat 2, maybe 3 lightsaber fights without cheating. And there's at least 5, if not 6 of them.
So basically, the Lego Star Wars games probably have better lightsaber fighting.
Oh, by far, I guarantee you. Matter of fact, I'm pretty well aware that they actually focused on fixing that issue of the upcoming sequels that I haven't played yet, as there seems to be like a focus on learning new abilities and actually being able to do stuff like throw the lightsaber like it's a giant boomerang and stuff like that. That the which would then weed its way through the rest of the Star Wars games. But yeah, this one really does suffer from early issues of how do you make this work in first-person combat, and it just doesn't. I'll also say I'll throw this in here extra too that there's an expansion to Jedi Knight, and I'm not gonna bother playing it anymore. I got to the second level, and immediately they throw odds against you you just can't beat. That and the voice acting is terrible, and the cutscenes are so cheap that it's literally in-game graphics that they very poorly re-rendered. Everything just made me groan. So yeah, the DLC is not very well liked, and I can see why. The main game, I think it's fun, at least in the first person bits, and a majority of the development of the main character is really nicely done. But the villain parts are hammy, and the lightsaber duels are garbage, just hot, horrible garbage. So go in there understanding it's going to be a mixed bag, and this is an early game in the franchise. Apparently things got a lot better after this. Is my basic comeback out of it. Take it, that's it.
All right. And that'll do it for Geek Talk.
Mm-hmm.
So that takes us up to the episode summary.
Yes, it does. Who's today?
Ooh,
It's
it is
Bill.
me, and
Ah.
this is a tricky one.
All right, Bill, you ready?
I am ready.
3, 2, 1, start.
All right, we start with a few scientists in Antarctica who find what's some sort of strange pod under the ice. They test it out amongst themselves, and they agree that it is some sort of plant. In the meantime, back in England, their superior agrees to sell them out to a millionaire, possibly billionaire, by the name of Harrison Chase. We go back to the scientists, and for whatever reason, the pod, once exposed to some light after they thought that it might be alive, has started to grow and to take over one of their bodies. The doctor arrives originally to check out what the pod was, and is now tasked with trying to save the scientist. They're not very successful, and he eventually becomes a murderous alien that the doctor refers to as a crinoid. Uh, he runs out into the ice, or into Antarctica, and two henchmen of Mr. Chase, Scorby and Arnold Keeler, arrive, claiming to be lost, but then before long they start threatening people, steal the second pod because the doctor found a second one, and blow up the Antarctic base. The person who sold them out is aghast, but Mr. Chase says it was a necessary sacrifice and doesn't care to elaborate any further. The doctor and Sarah Jane head to England to see what the fuck is going on, and they get captured and almost killed, but Sarah Jane frees the doctor. While all this is going on, the second pod takes over the body of, I think it was Keeler, and he starts to become a new crinoid. But he starts to become much larger and eventually becomes Biolante. Bit characters start dying, and the doctor goes off to a unit to try and get their help. The brigadier's in Geneva, so he has to talk to a bunch of people we've never met before, which seems to be bad enough that unit does not get hired on to do another job in Doctor Who for another decade. The doctor, with some minimal unit support, head back to try and stop the crinoid. Characters are dying randomly because that's what's happening. And then eventually they're trapped in the house with the giant crinoid trying to destroy it. The doctor tells unit to order an airstrike because that's the only way to stop it from taking over every plant in the world, because it communicates telepathically with plants and has also taken over Mr. Chase's mind. As the airstrike is coming, the doctor uses steam from I'm thinking it was the furnace or the heating of the house to force the crinoid away from the door, and he and Sarah Jane escape in the nick of time. There is also a subplot where Scorby argues that he refuses to rely on other people and work together as a team, and rushes out into the crinoid and promptly dies. Then the doctor and Sarah Jane try to leave. For some reason, they end up in Antarctica instead of where they're trying to go. Then they go back into the TARDIS to try again. The end.
All right. 4 minutes, 10 seconds.
Made it under 5, and I don't think I missed anything really important.
Only the fact that the doctor was sent there by basically unit in the first place. But,
right.
Yeah.
I left Hargreaves out of the story entirely, but that's what happens when you're the butler of the evil maniac.
Yeah, you just die so nonchalantly that Bill basically even lost that you were dead.
I knew he was there and then not there anymore.
Alfred, he wasn't.
The main thing I noticed about him was that he looked like a shorter version of Angus Scrimm from the Phantasm series.
I wouldn't even give him that kind of credit.
All right, let's talk about what you liked about the serial. And Bill, you are first.
Why am I first? I just gave the summary.
The Dice God spoke. You're first.
Pray to Niffle next time, maybe you won't be.
So I like the fact that even though Unit did come in for the rescue, it wasn't a cut and dry, oh yeah, they're just going to solve it. And it also wasn't as cut and dry as, oh, they're completely useless. Like, it was just nuanced enough that it was worth having them there, but that they weren't like a Deus Ex Machina. They were just a necessary tool. So I thought that was a very good use of Unit, even though it
I
was
don't
missing
know.
the good characters.
The Unit guys were pretty stupid, but I'll talk about that in a bit.
That's what happens when there's Tweedledee and Tweedledum left behind and not the Brigadier.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, Thomas.
I just like the main villain, Chase, and I think it's because as much as I am partial to extremely over the top insane Doctor Who villains, this was like a lot more restrained than I was kind of expecting. Like, I was really expecting him to go off the wall.
At the
So
same
the
time,
fact-
he was creepy as fuck.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
It's like he kind of walks a line of just being, he makes it work without being like, I guess like it doesn't drop into Horns of Nimon territory. Even though I like that territory, it doesn't like, you know, he doesn't go completely off the deep end in that direction.
From like scene one, I'm like, this guy is not playing with the full deck.
Mm.
All right, Matt.
Okay, so general thing I liked. Trying to think off the top of my head. I thought it was actually kind of interesting that at least up until the very last act of this episode, we actually don't even see the TARDIS involved in anything.
Yeah.
And I think that also kind of throws things for a loop per usual, because usually the TARDIS is always there, and it's just like, well, the answer is if all else fails, we can just hop in the TARDIS, and that's not a thing in this episode at all.
Yeah, I spent most of it thinking that he didn't even take the TARDIS, that he was shipped out there by Unit.
He was.
Nope. It revealed at the very last episode that they had set the coordinates, that the Doctor had used the old coordinates for takeoff, which means he went to Antarctica in the TARDIS.
So this was the last serial to use that particular police box prop because it wore out and collapsed. I suspect that there's a good chance that it did so during filming.
Like they filmed that Antarctica scene last
Or
first.
Possibly.
Managed to get it, and then the prop fell apart, and they're just like, well, shit.
That's what I'm thinking.
Actually, I have a problem then with this story, because we see them getting dropped off by helicopter.
It could be that they weren't at that particular base, and they had to get a helicopter from another base to that one.
Because I was
That
wondering,
seems a little sketchy, but okay.
Did they show how they got from Antarctica back to England?
Nope.
Nope.
No.
So that's why I assumed they just kind of took the TARDIS off screen. So maybe they just filmed one scene of them getting out of the TARDIS in in Antarctica. And then when they tried to use it again, it collapsed, and they're like, okay, we're just going to put that footage at the end of the episode and figure out the rest of the episode.
That's kind of weird. There's some continuity not quite matching there.
Yeah, but I think that's because their prop fell apart, so they didn't have a choice. All right. So I guess I really liked just seeing Unit again, the outfits and everything. Even if it wasn't the regular guys, I just liked seeing them.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is literally one last hurrah for Unit, and we wouldn't see them again until the 5th Doctor era. So, yeah. Let's talk about what we didn't like. Bill.
I felt like the whole thing about sending mercenaries to destroy the Antarctic base instead of, like sneak around and steal shit, like it just seemed like cartoonishly evil to the point like it didn't seem to really further Mr. Chase's goals at all. It was just there to be like, look how evil he is and look how evil the people working for him are.
In a way, I can understand it, and that is the fact that if these guys show up, it's going to be noted and logged,
Yeah.
and they're going to eventually trace them back to Chase. So you have to arrange a disaster to make sure nobody knows who was there. Of course, it failed because the Doctor and Sarah got away, but
Right.
Mm-hmm.
and eventually traced them back to Chase.
Yeah.
All right, Thomas, what about you? What did you not like?
There's probably other things that I had bigger issue with, but to a point, the further into the story I got, it just kind of felt like this could have been done in 4 episodes.
Okay, that was something I was going to mention in the thing. I liked the tight shooting of the first 2 episodes. And the fact that they got, all of Antarctica done in 2 episodes. And I'm like, wow, I'm feeling like they could get this done in 4 going into that. But no, they dragged out the England part for 4 episodes. And it did feel dragged out, at least somewhere in the middle. It felt like they were spinning their wheels and not going anywhere.
That's because they literally didn't go anywhere. They were trapped around that building the entire time.
Well, they went to Unit HQ and back, and by they I mean the Doctor.
Well, yeah, but it's like there's like almost an episode where the whole plot can be summarized by the Doctor and Sarah escape and then get recaptured.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It didn't drag for me as much as like the Web Planet, which is another one that I've bitched should have been like 2 episodes shorter, but it was still just like, okay, this feels like it should be over by now. Why is this taking so long?
Mm-hmm. It's like you don't feel that way in the first 2 episodes. Like I said, those are pretty tightly shot. But yeah, the remaining 4 episodes, you're just kind of like, get on with it.
Yeah, it does make me wonder if this is one of those. I feel like there would probably be a far less by then, but if this is one of those scenarios where like possibly another story fell through or another story was shortened, so this one had to be lengthened or something like that. I don't know.
The original planned season finale, the script was not coming along as quickly as they'd hoped. They needed to be redone. So they commissioned a whole new finale, and at the time, all the season finales were 6-parters.
So they just lengthened it, which never works well.
Well, like it was only ever commissioned as a 6-parter, but it was it does seem like it was on a short time frame.
And by the way, I disagree with you, Thomas. I think the Web Planet should be 6 parts shorter. All right, Matt, what did you not like about this?
Oh gosh. So actually, I had this legitimate question, and I think it dawned on me at least by the 4th episode. How hard is it really to buy and find good help? Because holy smokes, are these guards and your main assassin guy this useless?
Well, when you're an asshole who's known for being a total misanthrope, it's probably pretty difficult unless you're I was gonna say
I
unless you're a
suppose
Batman villain,
it might be a
but I guess
little
he
more
is a
difficult, but at the
Batman
same
villain.
time, finding people who are just there for the money isn't that hard usually.
He doesn't
I-
live in Gotham.
I don't know. Why did Lex Luthor put up with Otis through like the original Superman movie? Why did
Because he's a useful idiot.
now this is the thing. Yes, his assassin's a psychotic moron, and yet he refers to him as my best man. I have my, that's what he's trying to do. I swear to God, he's trying to channel Blofeld throughout like the entire 6 parts that you see this guy. All he needs is a kitty. Think about
For a point of difference, what was this guy's name? The lead henchman?
oh God, starts with S.
Scorby.
Scorby. Let's take Scorby and compare him to Bob from Batman the movie. The first live action full length Batman movie.
Yeah.
Bob is better.
I mean, Bob doesn't also.
Bob
doesn't have
literally
any
has 2
dialogue
lines the
or,
entire movie, and all
yeah.
he does is use a pistol. He's more effective and more useful than Scorby. Period.
Mm.
Bob actually has an action figure.
Yeah, I don't think they ever made a Scorby action figure.
Nope, I highly doubt it. If they did, he'd also have to have the secondary item where he gets strangled by vines.
Okay. So, my issues with this, and I have a few. One, you're at an Antarctic base, which is a minimum of 5,000 kilometers from any known position. Except for other Antarctic bases. The total population of Antarctica there for a continent the size of Australia is between 1,000 to 5,000 people. So pretty much everybody knows everybody else. So a plane, which has a minimum fuel cruising range of 1,500 miles, comes in out of nowhere and they're not suspicious.
Supposedly they're lost, but yeah, that is really weird.
I mean, the fact that the people in there are English, the closest place to that has English places are the Falkland Islands and New Zealand and Tasmania.
Well, I was thinking South Africa.
South Africa, they can speak English, but it's not their native. It tends to be more Germanic.
I thought England was still mostly in control of South Africa at that point.
Either way, it doesn't matter. They're all about 5,000 miles or 5,000 kilometers from Antarctica. Right. So that's longer than a plane can make on one fuel tank.
Oh, that I did not know.
Yeah. I looked it up. A Cessna only has about an 850-mile range. A Learjet has a 1,500-mile range. Neither one of those is approaching 5,000 kilometers. So they would have had to have refueled from a ship or a tanker or something, which means they were trying to get there, which would have been really fucking suspicious.
Yeah, there would have been a noticeable path.
Yes. I mean, that the doctor and Sarah, they were at least expecting them. They had radioed and they said the scientific guy, the doctor, is coming from unit to take a look at the pod. So they were expecting them. These guys come out of nowhere and they just leave them with no security or nothing. No. My other issue, unit. Oh, well, we tried the laser. It didn't work. We're out of ideas. Really? What about napalm? What about military-grade anti-foliant like they used in Vietnam? You know, Agent Orange, that kind of shit? Say what you want about it. If it's that or wiping out all animal life on the planet, I'd go for the fucking Agent Orange. You know?
Last chance hopes, at least. Yeah.
Yeah.
And even still, my first option probably wouldn't be, let's shine concentrated light on this photosynthesizing life form.
No, my first thought, the second I saw that thing, was napalm.
I was thinking like concentrated weed killer, which is I kind of just assumed they would try until I never saw them try it.
That's what they came in and came into the base with little hand packs. But I'm talking, freaking like industrial sprayers out of helicopters or freaking missiles full of canisters of this shit like the militaries had. That's what military grade defoliant is basically stuff that like they used, like I said, in Vietnam to defoliate the jungle so that they could get better shots in. It exists, and they knew it existed as of 1976, 77 when they made this cereal. So, the fact that that would be a call the military would go to.
Shrug.
I had a third issue. Trying to remember what the third issue was. I think we may have already brought that one up, so I'm just going with those two things. Both of which kind of bothered me when I watched the serial. Also, damn shame that they actually used a military solution to take out the monster and the brig wasn't there to see it.
Right.
Just see the Brigadier having been there originally and being able to do a little happy dance.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the doctor said, blow it up, Corporal. Yeah.
It'd also be the one time where he wouldn't want to try and blow it up because he knows they're in there.
So the world's being threatened by a giant weed. Call in the Orkin men, All right. Favorite scene?
Oh, so that would make it me.
Yes.
So I think I'm going to go with the scene where Chase kind of reveals himself as being under the control of the Crinoid. It's just that right level of creepy.
All right.
Where he's openly controlled and he's sitting there talking to the plants.
Or when they're talking, when they're talking to him, and he's like the Crinoid's using him as a mouthpiece. He's like, "Oh yes, I hate you. The death of animal life is only a matter of time."
Oh, he wasn't just he was fucking out there at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wasn't just a mouthpiece for the Chronoid. He was mouthpiecing for himself too. He's that loopy.
He already had that half fascination.
That's true, because later on he refers to himself as an individual. I think at the time when that scene aired, I thought he was just like another plant where his mind had been subsumed by the Crinoid. But then later on he does refer to himself as an individual later. That's true.
Bastard broke the treaty. Spider crawling right across my laptop.
I was gonna say, what's the O about?
But no, there was another O. I remembered another one of my issues. So Harrison Chase, the first time we meet him, goes on this bitching rant about what are you doing about the poor mistreated bonsai.
Yeah, that's right. That gave me a ha moment.
Well, no, I got that. It's supposed to be the yay plant moment. But then we go out into his estate, and what do I see? Sculpted shrubberies.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, wouldn't he consider that to be plant abuse too?
Hypocrite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hypocrite check there. Anyway, Thomas, your favorite scene?
I'm just gonna go with the scene where Scorby is threatening Sarah Jane, and she's basically just not backing down, despite the fact that this is a guy who, at this point, has nothing to lose and could basically just shoot her and run. But she's just still just like, no, fuck you, and like tells him off.
All right, Matt.
The doctor, through the skylight, lands on top of Scorby, knocks him over, steals his gun, pulls Sarah Jane away, pushes the scientist back, and when asked what does he do for an encore, he just smiles and goes, "I win," and walks out the door.
He had more action scenes in this episode than I've seen from most of the Fourth Doctor stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like literally doing Pertwee levels of action.
He even
Just
had
about.
he even had a save the tied up damsel moment.
Mm-hmm. A couple of
Well,
times.
he had to do that a couple times, but he also needed to be saved once too.
That was also a fisticuff scene, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he
Alright.
knocked out Scorby with a good right hook. Oh no, it wasn't Scorby. It was the other guy that tried to get them in the car.
So yeah. He did that. He did a lot of minor hand-to-hand stuff around the estate, and then he had a couple of save the damsel scenes. So yeah, he was hitting Pertwee levels of action hero. And it might be that this is the first season that we saw him without
Harry.
Harry Sullivan, who was going to be the action hero. So it's just might be that this is just the first chance he had to do it. But I don't remember him doing it much after this.
I mean, after this, he has action heroine Leela.
Yeah, but but even like later on with that Ramana and stuff, his action hero, he tends to be more comedic.
Right.
Kind of, sorta. He still also has like sword fights and stuff once in a while.
But I think they were mostly comedic too. But
yeah, I mean, Talons of Wen Chiang has him beating up a group of guys that Leela was, for some reason, not allowed to dispose of instead. But
All right. So my favorite scene, I think, is the one with the old artist lady, working with the government. What's his face, Sir Colin Thackeray, and just him trying to get rid of her, and she's just, I don't know why, but I found that scene to be particularly amusing.
I found that character to be kind of amusing too.
So sorry, I spaced. Which scene did you say?
The scene with the old lady.
Oh, okay.
Hot.
Mm-hmm.
And Sir Colin Thackeray in his office.
Right.
And it's like the bit where she's like, well, those civil service guys, they can never get anything done. I am a civil service guy.
So you know exactly what I mean.
Know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Right.
Just that whole bit just made me smile, that whole scene.
Did none of us mention the scene with the where the doctor like convinced Unit what was going on?
I don't think I really mentioned it that much. No.
I feel like normally one of us would have picked that scene, but none of us did.
Nope.
He's like, "Here, you read the briefing." Okay, that was a paragraph. Now you read the briefing.
Oh, it's all within a mile of the building. Well, I guess that sells it, doesn't it? Oh, there we go. I finally just found the actress. The picture of her in this episode, at least.
All right. So, least favorite scene, Bill.
So this is a nitpick, but I couldn't come. I couldn't really. I didn't really have another scene that stood out to me to mention. But the scene where like it's life or death, they need to escape, and Sarah Jane's answer is to strike a dramatic pose and do a "woe is me" speech, rather than trying to get out. And like, I get it, she's stressed out and shit, but like, I kind of wish that she had like been a little more of snappy action Sarah for a few more minutes. But like I said, I think it was a nitpick.
All right. Thomas?
God. No, I'm completely blanking. I'll pass.
All right, Matt?
Oh gosh, I just had one now. What was it? Frel. Least favorite scene. Yeah, I had it now. My brain went sideways. Now I can't remember it. Dang it. Oh, yeah. The end of the episode, we're trying to escape with the Doctor and Sarah, and we use steam. And that somehow allows us to escape?
Made it wilt.
But they also still ran out to the same stuff that eventually got the previous guy that ran out into the middle of the plants.
Yeah.
So...
Plot armor.
Yeah, there's some high-level BS going on with their escape here. I don't
Yeah,
get...
it would have been better if the Doctor and them timed it so they got out just before the explosions hit the thing. Because the plants would have gone back to normal without the control of the crinoid. So they would have been safe.
Yeah, my logic would have been we need to hide in the deepest corner of the basement or sub-basement or something, and most likely they would still have survived.
Or the house would have collapsed on them.
Well, if you're staying in a safe spot, you should be fine, but yeah, there's a little bit of risk still there, but at the same time, I'm like, there's logical things you could have done instead of just blow the pathway open at the door with steam and then run into the stuff that's going to try and strangle you and would have strangled anybody else? Question mark head tilt?
Yeah,
It's just very strange that they managed to survive that and no one else ever does.
That would have been better if they had taken those 2 canisters they had of defoliant, dunked it on themselves, and gone for a run. So that way, anytime the plants tried to touch them, it just,
Yeah, that actually might have made some minor sense at least, and that could have been a possibility for just the two of them.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, as it is, it didn't make a lot of sense. So, my least favorite scene, I believe we're up to me,
Yep.
is the mulching of Harrison Chase. I understand that they had to edit it, but there's no way that thing, in the way it was laid out, would have mulched somebody without blood and fluid and the occasional, piece of tissue going flying all over the place. There's no way the Doctor could have stand that close and seen down without getting his face basically coated in blood. Like it was like a freaking Evil Dead movie. I know they couldn't do it because it was a kiddie thing, but they probably should have had it laid out so that there was some kind of protective barrier.
Next on R-rated Doctor Who.
Well, that's also something else I was about to bring up is that was an unusually grim dark ending for a character who wasn't a bad guy. Yeah, he just got chopped up into mulch and literally fed to the bad guy.
He was a bad guy.
Yeah, he was responsible for all of
Oh,
this.
wait, I'm sorry. I was thinking of the unit soldier.
Oh, yeah.
No, the unit soldier happens off screen, technically.
Yeah, now imagine if they'd gotten the Brigadier. That would have been Sergeant Benton.
Oof.
There would be such a nasty letter written to the BBC if that was Benton.
But no, I think Benton has enough plot armor that he might have seemed dead, and then they would have cleared the plants away, and he would have been in a bunker. Maybe not a bunker, but dug a hole or some shit.
Yeah, it feels like the way they could have got around it was just by having the Doctor and Sarah Jane just be able to get out of the room, and then just from the other side of the door, you just hear screaming.
Mm-hmm. But they had them look right down as he was being mulched.
Oh yeah, there should have been a
And-
massive mess.
There should have been a massive mess, considering that the mulcher was basically just two giant, I don't even know what you call those, but mashers, whatever,
Grinders.
grinders, and there was nothing protecting it at all.
Hmm.
And that's just like, no. First of all, safety standard fail. Second of all, that would spray. So, yeah. I'm not saying that they should be showing the spray. I'm just saying that that was a bit unrealistic of.
Yeah. It's like there's a reason Doctor Who usually would just cut away, or like
Cut
have
away-
it be that this is happening like in a different room or something.
Mm-hmm. And they didn't, so it just kind of made it not real.
Hmm.
Anyway, final thoughts. Bill.
Okay, so as you might have noticed, most of my issues with this episode were on the nitpicky side, where I feel like I had an maybe not overabundance, but definitely plenty of things to say on the positive. And even some of the other issues, like I see why they could be marked as issues, but they don't affect very much my overall enjoyment of the episode. It does not quite hit that perfect level, but definitely a very enjoyable episode, partially just because of how creative it is. Uh, I know it draws from a lot of existing inspirations, but it also kind of broke a lot of ground that would be derivative if it came out today. But at the time, a lot of the things that we would want to compare it to didn't exist, which kind of says they must have been doing something right to kind of strike on those pop culture chords before they were pop culture references. And overall, yeah, while there are some issues, especially with relation to how they traveled with no TARDIS visible and some of the realism, I think it was pretty good as a monster story.
All right. Is that everything?
Yeah.
All right. Thomas.
Um, I will say this: the further this went on, the harder it was for it to keep my attention because I'm just easily distracted to a point anyway. Um, but I feel like there's probably one episode in there that I just barely remember anything from. Which, part of it is just me like having a hard time concentrating. Part of it is probably just because it was one of the episodes where it feels like they're stretching stuff out. Ultimately, yeah, like this really does feel like something that would have benefited from being just 4 episodes, or even at a stretch like 5, so they could at least cut one episode out of this. It was nice seeing actors that honestly I did not expect to see again either again in Doctor Who, or just that I'd seen in other stuff, because the guy who played Thackeray um was on was the sort of, oh my god, I forget what the friggin', like the warden or something of the prison in Porridge, which Fulton Mackay, an actor from the Silurians, was also in. And the guy who, oh my god, I can't remember the character's name, but the guy who's initially kind of mesmerized by the pod, but doesn't actually get turned by it.
The botanist.
No, not Chase, like the
No. The
No,
botanist from
I
the
was saying
Arctic base.
Stevenson.
yeah. He was played by an actor who showed up in the War Games with Patrick Troughton. So I was like, oh, that's nice to. It's like, oh my, I've seen that serial enough. I recognize him. So that was kind of interesting. Just I feel like this is one where the acting's good enough, but it's just it just feels like the story just drags a bit like after a point. Like like again as Randy said, like the Antarctica stuff they get through nice and quick, and then okay, we're stuck in England for 4 episodes now with very little change of scenery, and it's just they could have been different things that have done. You know, it wouldn't surprise me. It's just a matter of this being so last minute that they had to just pull some trickery. But um, I wouldn't necessarily say to skip this though, especially if you're a fan of The Thing. It's kind of funny to watch this, having seen John Carpenter's The Thing, given that they're both based on, inspired by, in this case, the same short story.
All right. Is there anything else?
No, that's it.
All right, Matt.
All right. I'm gonna say the acting I feel was really good in this. I will say that the writing could have used some punching up, and we could probably decrease this by an episode if it wasn't for all the padding. There's definitely parts to like about this. We didn't even really mention the visuals. There's not too many digital ones, but there's at least a couple of points where there's a stop motion monster on the top of the house trying to eat it. That's combined later on with some actual explosions, which is also a nice thing about this. You can tell this episode had some budget. They blew up the models with a big earth-shattering kaboom. Like I said, unless the acting was actually really good, there's a teeny bit of the stuff that could have been rewritten. A little bit of rewriting, and maybe with some better luck, they could have done better with Unit. A little bit of rewriting here and there for some other things, or just maybe a rearrangement of how you shot it would have helped some other scenes as well. But for the mass majority of this, I'll say this is actually a pretty solid episode for considering its age and its time.
Anything else, Matt?
I guess that's about it. All I can think of to say right now.
All right. So, I am really a mixed bag about this episode. Writing wise, I felt that there was some stuff that the writer could have thought about doing that should have been dealt with, especially when dealing with how military thinks. Also, so a few logistics that should have been dealt with. Acting wise, I think the acting's fine. Everybody shows up well. The guy that plays Harrison Chase is very creepy, and it works. So no, I don't have any problems with the acting. Directing seems to be mostly okay.
Mm-hmm.
Visual effects are fine for what they're doing. Yeah, mostly my issues seem to be with the writing and the fact that, like I mentioned, that the latter portion of the episode, the second act takes too long, so it feels dragged out.
The middle bit definitely lulls.
Yeah, it stops, and it just seems that they're just going around in circles, stretching it out for more time, which really is unneeded. So those are really my only complaints. Let's rate this. Bill, you are first.
All right. I'm going to round up to a 4.5.
Thomas.
Um,
I guess by virtue of the fact that I would probably still say this is better than last week, I will agree with Bill and give this a 4.5.
Matt.
Wow, I thought I was going to be the high one this week. I was already at 4.5.
Yeah, I'll make it unanimous.
Whew.
And I was really expecting from your tone that it was going to be lower than that. And then I was going to have to get
It's
you back for last week.
it's in that 4.2 range. You know, the one that can kind of swing either way. So I just gave it the benefit of the doubt, considering when we reviewed it, it's mostly the writing that I have the issue with.
Yeah, it's just the writing, and it's if they would have just had a little more time to fix that up.
Well, I mean, I guess the splatter would have been the director's fault.
Yeah.
Partially director, partially you can't show that on television at the time.
Well, no, that would have been writing away so you didn't see the splatter. That would have been
That would have been more of a direction thing for that particular
yeah,
scene.
and that's one scene. Yeah.
And yeah, it's only one scene compared to everything else.
They did put green goo on the rollers, though. That actually did make it look gross.
Mm-hmm.
They just didn't put red stuff on there, which there would have been after it ate the freaking
After it ate a couple of humans.
yeah. Anyway, so that takes us to a 4.5, which will rank us pretty damn high. That will put us at number 60,
Whew.
replacing the Green Death. It is on par with Rosa, the War Machines, ironically, the Invasion, the Rebos Operation, Thin Ice, World Enough in Time / The Doctor Falls, Mission to the Unknown, Resolution, Enlightenment, New Earth, the Zygon Invasion, the Zygon Inversion, Utopia, Here Comes the Drums, and Last of the Time Lords. It is better than the Green Death, the 11th Hour, Partners in Crime, Rise of the Cybermen, Age of Steel, The Time Warrior, etc. And not as good as the Seeds of Death, oddly enough. The Talons of Wang Chiang, Arachnids in the UK, The Ghost Monument, The Invasion of Time, The Magician's Apprentice, The Witch's Familiar, The Return of Dr. Mysterio, etc. So there we go, number 60 out of 364 things reviewed. That is all we have to say about the Seeds of Doom.
All right, so let us know in the comments below what you think about the episode. Don't forget to like or dislike the video, and of course, subscribe to keep getting our exports on YouTube, or follow to see our live podcasts on Twitch.
All right, so next week, with season 13 done, we move on to season 14, and the only missing episode in that season, it is time for us to meet The Mask of Mandragora, written by Louis Marks and starring Tom Baker as the Doctor and Elizabeth Sladen as Sarah Jane Smith. See you next week.
Stay safe. Have a good night. See you all next time.